Hey, welcome back to the Drum Rundown. We are here today in Nashville, Tennessee at one of my favorite stages that is still left on the infamous rock block, The End. Thank you, Bruce, for letting us in early to talk to a drummer of one of my favorite bands of the last couple years. I have been running these records off the rails, man. The drummer of 68, Nikko Yamada. What is going on, man?
Howdy. How are you today?
Good, dude. Thanks for sitting with me here on this stage, sideways.
Oh, dude, absolutely my pleasure. Yeah, sideways. Yeah, I don't reckon you're used to this setup.
No, in this stage, I've played the stage. Many drummers in Nashville have played the stage, and it's just, you know, there's no room. It's crazy. When you, even in a traditional setup, the depth of this stage is very, very shallow, and there's not a whole lot of room, so it's kind of cool to be sitting here sideways in this format. Tell me why you are sitting in this format, though.
Yeah, so my bandmate and I, we set up front of stage, and we split it, so I'm skewed a little bit stage left, he's skewed a little stage right, and we set up this way because a lot of the music that we perform on stage at night, there's a lot of improvisational element, and so we like to face each other so that we can read each other, look for hits, and we find it's easier to feel the music a little bit more and to communicate musically. So facing each other is a nice way to stay in the moment with one another and be able to explore the musical space.
Yeah, of course. I don't know if a lot of drummers watching have experienced just doing a two-piece beyond maybe like a jam, but then taking a two-piece to like a live kind of environment. I know I did a couple of bands that way, and I think I found this kind of format to be better, I think, just for that connection. Are you finding that this is a preferred thing that you ever did in drumming, kind of like with that connection night to night?
Yeah, I find it really, I find it fulfilling, it just being the two of us and there being so much freedom for us to explore the music with one another. I think that the more people that there are, if there were more people on stage, then the levels of, the pathways of communication would be greater. But because it's just the two of us, it's very streamlined, so it's easier to read one another, and it makes for interesting, fun musical moments.
Yeah, dude, and these records, like, the musical moments are what I love. It's the little stalls and catches and pops and the weird changes and just like those matched hits, and it's so cool. I mean, that's what like draws me to what you guys are doing. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, and we're lucky to have you here doing it, because you said you had completely given up on drums and you weren't playing. And tell me a little bit about that origin story of how you got the call and how you got here.
So yeah, I was in college. I think I was by my credit hours, I think I was a junior at the time. I was going to school for business. I was majoring in business management with a minor in marketing. And I had given up on drums entirely. I had played a little bit when I was first started college, but I hung all that up. Some opportunities came and then sort of fell by the wayside. And I didn't want to be the individual like struggling in my early 20s to make music happen. So I just buckled down and focused on my schoolwork. And through my drum, it was a pretty dramatic, like throw the drums in the shed, let them collect dust and all. And I didn't touch sticks for 2.5 or maybe 3 years.
Wow.
And then, let's see, it was a Monday and I was having, I was eating out with some friends, and I was lamenting to them the fact that on the coming Friday I was going to have to take this corporate finance 2 exam, for which I was woefully unprepared. I hadn't even purchased the correct calculator I needed. So I was complaining to them, and then out of nowhere I got a phone call from my bandmate Josh, and I literally looked up at my friends. I was like, I think my life might change. And so I was like, hold on guys, I'll take this call. And so I ran out and we spoke, and he was needing a drummer to fill in for a tour that he had coming up, and you know there was the potentiality for work after that as well. So I told him I was interested, hung up the phone, immediately 5-way called my brothers and my mother and father, and told them the news. And my dad was one of the first one to be like, you should absolutely do it. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I was very, very thankful to have my family's support. I don't imagine it's often the case that family is supportive of one dropping out of school and quitting a job, both of which I did.
That's a 1-2 punch, dude, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but no regrets. I really love it. And you know, I had stepped away from the drums for a long time, and I didn't realize in the moment, but I had missed this artistic outlet and specifically the drums I love so much. So yeah, it reinvigorated my passion for it, and so I dove headfirst into it and started to relearn the language of it.
Yeah, and it's a pretty esoteric thing to jump into because this isn't like meat and potatoes rock and roll. Even though there's so much Southern rock, meat and potatoes DNA in it, it's very kind of like we were talking about. You're playing with time, you're playing with space, you're playing with a lot of things in that. What was it like approaching that music after, you know, the Styx were down for 2.5 years?
Yeah, good question. There was a big chunk of time where I was, well, okay, I'll say, at first I just buckled down and studied the songs.
Sure.
I was
Good
given
place to start.
I was given a list of songs to learn, so I just studied those. And I already knew that there's a lot of improvisation happening on stage, and there's an element of freedom in the playing. So I just wanted to get the skeleton of the songs in my head and to be able to perform them. So then after a couple tours, I got interested in jazz, and I wanted to expand my vocabulary on the drums and see what else the drums have to offer. And so in so doing, I started to find my own voice, and through the act of playing live, exploring new spaces within the music, it became a treat for me, and I believe my bandmate as well, to dig into the music and see what else is there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did, because this shit rips.
Thank you.
It's awesome. And
Thank you.
Let's talk about how it is getting done, because it's getting done on a very minimalist pared down kit, which I'm always a huge fan of. Basically kind of a one up, one down modified with a little brain here. Let's start there. I know that there's a lot of samples and things happening. What are you specifically using the SPD-SX for?
Just little sound bites and things that I will intersperse throughout the song. So I'll go ahead and say we don't use any clicks. There are no click tracks and no tracks to speak of at all. So I treat this as I would any other instrument. It's its own musical entity, and I try to approach it as such. So they're typically just short little sound bites to throw in a song to give it another dimension or flavor. So yeah, nothing really crazy. Just like little horn stabs or a bell or something like a church bell or things of that nature. So nothing too crazy. It's all just little short sonic stabs.
Yeah. And you're a man after my own heart. I love having that kind of stuff right dead center. That's kind of where I put my little digital brain as well. It's, when most drummers, it's kind of over here on the side, or it's an afterthought, or it's kind of back, towards the monitor. I love that it's dead center, ready to go. Yeah,
so I had worked this out for myself, because when I first started using this pad just a few short years ago, I had it over here, but I found it pretty difficult to play in a natural way. I was always reaching over here, and therefore now I only have so many drums, so if I'm hitting this over here, I can't play this right anymore, I can't play this floor tom anymore. So my solution was to mount it on the kick drum. However, when I mounted it, I found it was too far away. So actually what I did was I took this kick drum here, and I took the legs off, turned it around, I re-drilled the holes, and then so that where the tom mount is, it's now positioned closer to me, so it's a lot more comfortable. So yeah, it's nice, out of the way. I like for things to have, with the drums specifically, I like a small footprint. I don't like a big mess or anything, no big bulky hardware or anything, just simple and clean. And this it just so happens to be the case that this works for me.
Yeah, and let's talk about the dimensions of the kick drum while you're down there. What do we got?
How do you do dimensions? Do you do diameter?
Well, I do it the kind of pedestrian way, which is but so wrong. I do the diameter and then the depth, which I know is wrong, but it's really hard to do it the internet way to not get tuned up in the comments. Well, you do it how you want.
I'll be pedantic about it, and I'll just say it as it is. So this is a 20-inch diameter kick drum.
Yes.
And its depth is 14 inches.
Great.
With the few drums that I do have, I want for them to be on the smaller side of things. I find I get a lot more attack and punch out of the drums. Low end, it's a drum, so the low end is always there, and especially playing live, I think any sound guy can accentuate that. One thing that's hard to replicate, I think, is a good attack that can stand out above the rest of the noise. And my bandmate Josh, he has a very, very thick wall of sound. So I have these smaller drums, and I try to tune them up a little higher than one might typically expect for a rock and roll application, so that the fundamental tone can pierce through everything else.
Got it. Yeah, because you do have a wall of sound to get through, and I think even just by virtue of the way you're sitting, sonically, you're not kind of in a traditional blasting the kit forward at the crowd.
Right.
You're blasting it at this wall of this stage we love called the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So, and then the floor tom dimensions.
This one's 14-14.
Okay.
So same numbers, so that's easy. Yeah, 14-14. And the snare drum is it's 14 by 5. So again, small drums, very shallow. And the nice thing about these is that they're both 14-inch diameter heads, so I can just order whatever heads I want and swap them around.
I see G1s on both.
Yeah.
So is that out of practicality or is that a sonic choice?
I'll say that for this moment it's a sonic choice, but I'm not married to any particular head. The band 68, we have something of a deal with Diodario, so we get drum heads and sticks.
Nice.
I grew up playing Evans heads and ProMark 6 anyway, so when I joined the band, that was that was convenient for me. I was already used to those products. But right now I'm using G1s. That's just because I wanted to give it a shot. All the time I hear about people either, let me think about how to phrase this. You hear drummers all the time talking about, I'm ripping through heads, this, that, the other. I have to change them all the time.
Yeah.
But I tend to be a little lazy with my head changing. I want to stretch it as far as it'll go. I don't know if it's a frugality thing or laziness. Probably a healthy mix of both. Yeah. So right now it's just the G1s, just because I wanted to give them a shot. I wanted to try the thinnest head and see how that sounds. Also, it's worth mentioning I don't use any dampening.
Yeah.
With this band, because I want, of the drums, with what little drums I do have, I want to get as much voice and character out of it as possible. So no dampening, more overtone the better. I like really hard rim shots, so a thin head is nice for that.
Okay.
But G1s, just because I've used G2s, I've used UV1s, UV2s, maybe someday I'll try some calf tones. It's just whatever the mood strikes.
And coated versus clear.
I will tend to go for a coated head because I have some brushes as well, and which I don't often get to use in this band every now and again. But when I'm at home and if I'm playing jazz or something, a coated head is nice to have more texture and sonic options.
Okay, cool. And what do you got for resonant heads?
Snare side 300 there, and then just a thin resonant head on the floor tom. Doesn't matter what kind. I'm not too. It's a resonant head.
Yeah, because like you said, you're just looking for the character of the drum to kind of like go. You want the natural resonance, not much more than that, because you're looking for punch and attack, and you can fix it kind of in the house with a little bit.
Exactly.
Because I think that's the thing, right? You can add some of that reverb in space. It's really hard to take it away and dial it back, and people are starting to add gates and EQing out bad frequencies and overtones, and it's chaotic.
That's a conversation I usually have with the sound guy for the evening. If we're not using a sound guy through the duration of a tour, then every night I'll have a brief conversation with the house guy, and I'll just say, it's pretty much this verbatim. Hi, there's a lot of dynamics happening. Sometimes it's really loud, sometimes it's quite soft. So maybe not too hard of a gate if you can get away with it. And also, I like a lot of overtone on the snare drum, not reverb, but overtone. I like those high pitch.
Yeah.
So I like all that stuff to stay in because it's just added character. And then the more sound you have, the more you can manipulate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of characters coming from these cymbals, man. I see a Kurope here.
Yep.
Very, very cool. Talk to me about these.
All the cymbals are Zildjian. I don't have any deals or anything, so all the stuff that I have it's equipment that I personally love and have acquired over the years. So this is a K Kurope top, and the bottom is the Zildjian Newbeat. So actually, I only started playing this combination 2 days ago because the top hat had a big crack in it, and I liked the way that it sounded, so much so that I wanted to preserve the crack. So I put that aside and threw this hi-hat on. And I really love it because it's a thicker bottom, but this is nice and light, so it's got a wash and a good dark characteristic to it, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not too bright in the mix. And then this is a Zildjian 22-inch Renaissance ride.
Nice.
And I love this. I have two of them. This one has no holes in it, but the other one that I have, I'll usually put a rivet or two. I will request Zildjian to put 2 rivets in it.
Okay.
It's just for a different character. And for what it's worth, these are 15 inches.
I was going to say small drums, very big cymbals.
Yes.
By comparison.
Yeah, I think for drums, a lot of drums, it's easy to get caught up in the gear of it all, which is hilarious considering the nature of this talk right now.
This is all made up.
Yeah, but ultimately, and this is my personal belief, ultimately everything is just wood and nylon. So as long as you have access to a thing that can make a sound, you can make music no problem. However, with that being said, I do think a good snare drum and really nice cymbals are important for one's sound and to have the freedom to express oneself musically. So the snare, which is a Gretsch chrome over brass, these cymbals, these are my favorite pieces of gear. And for what I don't know if I mentioned, but the whole kit, it's all Gretsch. It's just a Gretsch Catalina club. You can get this at any Guitar Center.
Yeah.
So it's just like mid-tier stuff.
Yeah, and I love using mid-tier stuff. I'm a huge fan of that as well. I play like $500 kits that, in the 90s were Keller shells. So it's like everybody was making things out of Keller shells, so it doesn't matter what kind of badge is on it, right? It's just like you're saying, you can pull the tones out by kind of the heads that you use or kind of how you set it up. The cymbals are in the snare are a huge piece of it.
Exactly.
I think you get away with a lot. So I would be remiss not to ask, what does it say here on these Evans heads? Yeah,
good question. So this is Japanese katakana, which is the alphabet you use for foreign words, and what it literally says is Gatta, Getto, Itto, gotta get it. I always like writing. I like writing words or phrases that I find personally emotionally evocative. So this one works on 2 levels. Number 1, gotta get it. That's direct and to the point. Like, let's get this, and I like that. But also, there's this song I'm really obsessed with right now by great Japanese jazz pianist Makoto Ozone, and it's a trio he did with bassist Christian McBride and drummer Jeff Tane Watts, who's one of my favorites. And the song is called Gatta, Getto, Itto, and it's literally these characters. So I spelled it out because I'm obsessed with that song right now, and Jeff Tane Watts. So that's what that says.
Awesome, very cool. And you're smacking them with what sticks? What do we got?
Yeah, these are ProMark Carter McClean models.
Okay.
I love this stick because of this arrow tip here. The amount of stick definition you get from it is unparalleled. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the body of a 5B, which I was playing for a time prior to moving to this model. So the same length and thickness, just a different tip, which is makes a world of difference.
I've seen one of those in the wild. That is crazy. I love it.
It's awesome.
So what are you getting? You're saying articulation. Are you talking in like bells and ride?
The entire surface of the ride, the hi-hats, even to an extent the drums, like the drums themselves. But yeah, specifically the ride, the amount of sounds you can pull. This is already an incredibly expressive cymbal, but with depending on how you hit it, specifically with this stick, you can pull so many sounds out. So it's a fun time. I love fooling around and experimenting with different angles of attack and velocity, all that stuff.
Very cool. ProMark does it again.
They sure do.
Cool. And you have a spare B snare down there. What do we got?
Yeah, this is a Ludwig Acrolite.
Dude, yes, Black Galaxy.
Black Galaxy.
Yeah, man.
I got this.
It's on my wish list right now.
I got this from, I found this online, like this dude was selling it, and then I met with him at a retail parking lot. And he sold it to me for $45.
Shut up,
but
dude.
Yeah, because his son was like,
Come on.
I bought it for my kid and he doesn't want to play anymore. I thought $45 was like a pretty fair price. I was like, yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, but it's as far as a spare snare goes, it's not the best because I need to change the throw off on it. I can't tighten it or adjust it at all. Like the snare ribbon here, it's tied, it's like knotted up, and that is what's keeping it in place. So I need to replace that.
Yeah,
but I'm lazy.
Yeah, but you can't argue with Acrolite, man.
No,
it's like the second most recorded snare of all time after the Black Beauty. So like,
oh, is that the case?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah,
the internet.
Yeah, I knew that.
Things. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I just have a comment section, so you know.
Okay.
Well, I'll see you guys in there. Cool. And then monitoring. That's the last thing we haven't talked about. How are you getting things into your ears?
We run an in-ear monitor system.
Okay.
There's like a rack right there, maybe off camera. But so I just have a wireless pack, and then I run these molded ears into my ears.
Cool.
Yeah, and again, no clicks or tracks or anything. It's just so that we can hear each other with a higher sonic fidelity.
Through the chaos. And how are you taking your coffee? Mostly just all Josh, and that's it? Any of yourself? Or?
I thought that was a literal question. That's hilarious. I was like, Black. Thanks.
Black. Yeah, I know.
No, so yeah, a good amount of guitar and bass, and yeah, the drums just because there are so many, because there is a great variation in dynamics, I have the drums fairly present in the mix because I want to be able to hear really what I'm doing. Like I don't want to play something that I think sounds cool and then it's not. So yeah, guitar, bass, drums, this pad. Yeah, it's about the size of it. It's pretty simple.
Cool.
Nothing exciting.
Nice. Sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the kick pedal, because this is the first one ever, a 2000.
Yeah.
Let's go, dude.
Yeah.
A 2000.
Yeah.
I love it.
So again, I think it's about what you have to say with the gear that you have, whatever you have access to. I've played plenty of, so it's a DW 2000. I've played plenty of 9000s and 5000s. The 9000 is a nice pedal, but it has a lot of moving parts. With my experience, it's more opportunity for things to break or malfunction. So then I switched to a 5000, but then I bought this 2000 one day at a Guitar Center used for like $80. Just to have back home if my gear was still on the road or something. And I loved it so much. It was so easy to play. It just works so well.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you need. A 99. I think the retail price is $99, and you get a workhorse. Like I play my kick pedal really, really hard, and I've never had an issue with this. I love it so much that it's now the only thing I use. In fact, I have a spare snare over here.
Spare 2000.
Yeah, and then I have a spare 2000
I love
as
it,
well.
dude.
So that's all you need.
That's so cool.
And then with all the other stands, it's DW 6000 series hardware. I like the flat basses, and they're very, very light, so it's easy to carry around.
Yeah.
Again, that's probably that lazy streak in me coming out. But for what it's worth as well, aesthetically, I really enjoy them.
It's a really cool look. It's like that throwback vintagey thing that is just so cool. I see that you kind of have a very minimal way of even setting them up. They're not like strapped down or anything like that. So
Nope.
They're not moving on you, because I think that's kind of everybody's first thing is like, oh, it's not double braced. It's not the big chunky thing. It's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, everything's pretty stable. I could probably spike, like the hi-hat stand comes with spikes. Sometimes I forget to unleash those, so it'll slide on me, but I kind of like that. My friend Ethan, much to his chagrin, he's like, dude, no variables, less variables is better. But when things start sliding around, I get a small amount of joy from that, because it's just another variable. So I like scooting the hi-hat back, and then it ends up somewhere different than it was before. Maybe I will play something different. Maybe it inspires a different line of thought musically. So just small things like that I get a kick out of.
Well, that's cool in the context of improv, right? Because then that kind of changes what you have access to maybe for a moment. So it changes that in that performance to like, well, the hi-hat's out of bounds right now.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
It kind of changes it. That's cool. I think that's a nightmare for anybody that, like me, is trying to play a song like to the thing, and I have basically choreography, and then my leg falls off. So, you know.
Nah, I'm with it.
That's awesome. You
Fine by
certainly
me.
are with it, man. And I can't wait to see you get with it and get after it tonight. One of my favorite stages in all of Nashville. It's the end. Got to say thanks to Bruce for letting us crash the party and always being the greatest gracious hosts. Save the rock block, what is left of it. This is a show called The Drum Rundown. This is Nikko Yamada of a band called 68. We'll see you on the next one.